Hello, everyone. This is Lala, and today I am going to be reviewing and giving my retrospective on the challenge Vendettas, which also starts Era 4 of the challenge. I am currently working on my Era 3 recap and retrospective analysis, so that should be out soon if it's not out already by the time I publish this video. So I've said this in a few other videos, but I'll say it here since this is the season that I am in reference of. So the Challenge Vendettas was the very first season that I watched. I talked about how a friend of mine wanted me to watch the show like 3 years earlier, which would have been around the time Free Agents and Battle of the Exes 2 was airing, but I just never got around to it. But I got the news that the Big Brother people were able to go on the challenge, and I was following the casting rumors about all of that, which eventually led to Victor and Natalie going on the show. And because I recognized the show without ever watching it, I was like, okay, I'll give it a try. So based off of that, I did like Vendettas, but it was the first season I watched. I didn't have any context regarding the history of anyone else on the show. I didn't know what was the standard challenge season. But I watched this season live, and then I watched all of the Era 4 seasons live after this, and I never went to rewatch this season or watch the earlier seasons up until like a year or so ago. So when I did rewatch sorry, I watched the older seasons. I think I went from like Cutthroat onwards. I got to this season last year, and now that I actually have the history of the show and the contestants, and I know what a standard challenge season is, my opinion on this season dropped severely. I thought that it was very boring, I didn't really like the format, and there wasn't much going on. And it was a lower to mid tier season, in my opinion. And I was disappointed that the season that got me into the challenge was such a lackluster season. So that is how I felt about the show last year, or sorry, the season last year when I watched it. Obviously, watching it now, I watched all of the seasons in order and have a lot more context towards everyone that's ever been on the challenge, and I a lot more nuance in the show's history overall. And honestly, I kind of like it, though I don't really love it. It's probably still somewhere in the middle tier, but I did think that the format was a lot less complicated than Dirty 30 or The Final Reckoning, which I definitely appreciated. There was no Redemption House. Though I found it weird that they kept on talking about Vendetta, 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 where they were apparently using it incorrectly at the time, and people were casting the other Vendettas, but there's no gameplay element into it since they were never paired with one another. So the focus on that just really annoyed the crap out of me. The the Troika function still really, really, really sucks. I didn't like how the man kind of manhandled all of the Troikas. And then I didn't like how they handled the final, where there was one winner out of 8, and then they essentially erased everything that happened on day 1, with only the puzzle actually mattering. Obviously, I wasn't a big fan of the to be continued. That was a thing since the last few seasons. Though it's a bit more tolerable here, it just was still annoying to deal with. I did really, really like the cast overall. I felt like most of the rookies were very solid. They all accomplished something on the challenge, whether they're on for a few seasons or they're still currently on. I liked how it was a majority heavy Era 3 cast, and they were also starting to make names for themselves, and some of them were only introduced within the last few seasons. And overall, there wasn't a whole lot of drama, but the drama that was present, outside of Note Gates, which effing sucks, was pretty decent. So overall, I found this season to be, it might be an upper middle tier season, but I think I enjoyed it more than Dirty 30, and it's around where Invasion is, in my opinion. This season is in Spain, and they are pushing this season as the sequel to Dirty 30, since they are hoping that the feuds from last season will continue on to this season. They talk a lot about vendettas, but they're not paired with one another in a format, so it's very weird and it really doesn't matter. Kayla and Cara Maria are vendettas from last season, and Kayla shades Cara's hair in the confessional. The prize money is $500,000, and Leroy's vendetta is against Brittany, where he hopes that he can win to start barber school. TJ announces that the challenge is Get Off the Rock, where they have to run 400 feet through the city and in the tunnel, but it is also taking place overnight as well. And the next morning, they then have to make it to the top of the mountain, and the last man and woman who arrive is going home. So the season is starting with a purge, which I guess shouldn't be shocking since they did that last season. They will do that in the next two seasons as well. So we're going on a string of 4 seasons in a row where the season starts with a purge. So Joss and Kaylee are exes from their Ex on the Beach UK season, and he cheated on her because he can't resist vaginas. Nelson and Tony have had their issues since Invasion, so they are one another's vendettas. Sylvia and Nicole are also vendettas due to Invasion, and Devin is bragging about being in shape, where his vendettas are Corey and Bananas. They make it to the tunnel, and they then have to hold their box and stay in their circle for 6 hours. Rogan and Kyle have vendettas because he slept with Kyle's girl, which, lovely. Marie is really feeling Kyle, but Cara Maria is also checking for him as well, since he reminds her of a parrot. Victor is vendettas with Natalie. Sorry, Natalie is vendettas with Victor. It was supposed to be Polly, but he injured himself during some sort of DJ event, and I'm shocked that he was an actual DJ, because I know that was his claim in BB18, but that was a fake career. But since that happened and they didn't want to put Corey the alternate on, Victor ended up being here instead. And Bananas is talking about being single for the first time in his career since he broke up with his girlfriend for 5 years, and he is definitely eyeing Natalie. And this will be the start of him kind of going for a rookie woman. Brittany thinks that Brad is hot, and there's that build up already. They have to leave in in the order that they arrived, and then run up the mountain. Melissa and Katie are vendettas, where they were best friends, but Melissa doesn't understand why they aren't friends anymore, though Katie mentions that Melissa slept with her man on the show that they were on. Rogan injured his spleen 5 years ago, but it didn't affect him until now, with running up a mountain. Joss gets first out of the men and everyone. Rogan ends up passing out due to his back, and Nicole knows that she is a goner. Jamie shades Bananas for getting second to last. Rogan goes to the medic, but both Rogan and Nicole are purged. At this point in time, Nicole was running on fumes, as she didn't have many relationships or ties at this point in time on the show, and she was a poor competitor. But they weren't interested in her enough to put her on X on the Beach, and I think she would have been back on the challenge had she not gotten violence twice on that show, making her a liability. Rogan seemed like someone who had a lot of personality just from the little that he was shown here, so it was a shame to lose him here, but at least he did get a second chance a few seasons down the line to make something of himself. They all go to their villa where Shane roomed himself with a bunch of newbies so he can influence them. Nelson and he are vendettas due to their drama on Invasion, but they agree to work together for now and room in separate rooms so they can kind of work both sides. But we'll see how long that lasts. And Shane is planning on stabbing people in their backs this season. Bananas is getting close to Natalie as she is teaching him Spanish, but she thinks that he is cute and funny. Brad and Brittany are flirting with one another, and he talks about how he recently divorced Tori, but he cannot keep his hands off Brittany, and they're already making out. We learn that Corey and Alicia have been hanging out for a few months before the season, and Alicia is talking about Cam, where they have issues from their Are You the One season, so Cam is definitely planning on sending Alicia home ASAP. Nicole is talking about her feud with Sylvia to people, and everyone is talking about Brad hooking up with Brittany to make Tori look bad. We literally see them hooking up to the point where they're having outright sex on the very first night. Brad is just totally shameless. Cam gives Corey a warning about dealing with Alicia since she is trouble. Cam and Leora are asking Bananas about Miss Venezuela, and she reports back to Natalie, where they are nicknamed the Natalie. Marie tells Natalie about how mean Carmaria is since she sees Carmaria trying to warm up to the vulnerable newbies to use that to her advantage. For some reason, Victor is giving Joss advice on how to play the game, and it seems like they're making some sort of alliance, and he's trying to play like Big Brother, which is already mistake number one. Marie wants to make a move on Kyle, and she is told that he's with Cara Maria, so Marie makes her move to make out with Kyle. Cara Maria is annoyed, but is trying to hide it, but we do have Kyle admitting that he would have chosen Cara Maria over Marie. Devin talks about his vendetta with Bananas, which is only a sign for what's to come with them this season. Eddie was pulled because there may or may not have been a restraining order from him against Alicia that the producers didn't know about, though some of the challengers said that it was false. I don't know. Anyways, he was edited out of the few episodes that he was on completely, which is why I forgot about it. I am shocked that Derek or even Big Brother 18 Corey weren't moved from their alternate position to take his spot, since they were on location. And we see Derek later on in the season. Jamie and Brittany talked about their bone vote or the burn vote situation that happened last season, and Leroy wants Brittany out first. And apparently, we have some sort of context about Brad and Tony being vendettas, where Brad watched last season and didn't like how Tony spoke to Carmaria during their argument. So he added her on Twitter and told her that he would send Tony home on their next challenge together. We see Natalie and Bananas getting closer, and she's letting her guard down. And I get why she had a guard up based on what happened with James Hewling on Big Brother. And Victor is nervous about Bananas targeting him due to her. Cal and Carmaria are getting closer and closer, where we see the woman ogling at Joss cleaning shirtless, and Leroy is also ogling as well, though he's kind of joking about the entire situation. Carmaria talks about Kayla to Marie, and she ends up telling Carmaria that the vets need to work together against the newbies. So Marie's essentially trying to encourage Carmaria to calm down the feud. Who's Got Balls is the daily where they have to get 3 balls into this large, soapy water. The last guy is sent into the elimination, and the top 3 people overall become a part of the Troika, who decides which person will go against the loser. Leroy is ogling at Cam, though it's not heavily emphasized on the edit. Sylvia also ogles at her future final reckoning partner Joss a few times in the episode. Brittany, Carmaria, and Cam get top 3 out of the women, and Bananas, Cal, and Brad are the top 3 out of the guys. But the guys make up the Troika since they're faster than all the women. And it's one of the dumb things about this format, where they don't split it up by guys and girls when it comes to who gets into the Troika. Nelson is going into elimination for getting dead last, and we have Devin and Shane plotting about who will be in, where he tells newbies Victor and Joss, or he gives newbies Victor and Joss advice on how to handle the game and this part of the game. Zach tells Corey that he is alright, so he and Nelson are pushing for Devin and Victor to get nominated. The Troika decides that Corey needs to go, since he's a bigger threat than Devin. Brad pushes for Tony since he has no relationship with him, and there's one person that is getting mentioned, where Bananas suggests Devin, which Brad shuts down immediately, which worries Bananas, thinking that Brad and Devin are working together. The third guy ends up being Victor. Tony's upset, but he's trying to keep calm, and Corey isn't shocked at all, since it's the third season in a row where he's in the first elimination, and he's also including Champs versus Stars in this. The Inquisition is the diner, where the 3 of them are going to have dinner to campaign to the Troika. Corey mentions that he knows that he's going in. He throws Victor under the bus, mentioning that Victor is working with Shane and Brad. Tony shades Brad's beady eyes, but anyways, nothing really happens, where Brad mentions that he isn't working with any of them, but Corey also isn't giving a whole lot of answers that will help his cause. So we move on to the club where Nelson and Corey are speaking to Kyle so they can convince him not to nominate Corey against him. And Kyle promises Corey to not send him in. And we see Kyle and Carmaria also flirting in the club where they end up hooking up in the bunk bed. Marie is over the entire situation, so she is moving on. And the episode ends with Corey getting voted into elimination, and we still have to deal with a bunch of to be continueds. TJ announces the grenade where it's something that you get after winning your elimination, and you can use it to screw over a vendetta. Corey is of course sent into elimination against Nelson, where they compete in Balls of Fire, where they have to shoot a fired up soccer ball into a fired up soccer net. It's a really lame elimination, and neither one of them could kick it properly, where I believe it takes them an hour in order for it to be changed into a sudden death round where Nelson does end up beating Corey. This would be the start of the end of Corey's fuckboy antics on the challenge, though he would go on to doing X on the Beach with Alicia right after this, while the season is still filming, where he will meet Taylor, which will change his life in many ways. Overall, he didn't do much this season, since he was on the outs and he didn't have much room to breathe, and his showmance with Alicia is a lot more interesting on X on the Beach than it is here. Nelson gets a grenade and he calls out Cal for breaking his promise, though Cal is playing dumb to escape any sort of accountability. Nicole and Melissa are getting close, and Nicole wants to turn another woman gay. Ugh, such awful, toxic rhetoric and mentality, but we're gonna move on. And Melissa does tell her that she is straight, but she is horny and she will flirt with a wall, where the two of them fool around in the washroom. Alicia and Kaylee are talking about how the latter finds Nelson attractive, but his beard is off, and Natalie is speaking to Alicia, where they are seemingly close, and she is telling her about liking bananas. Devin sees a lonely Nelson as someone he can mold into whatever he wants, and we see the two of them and Victor talking about the grenade. Natalie and Melissa are playing cheerleader, and both of them are getting close to influential challengers, but Melissa does end up injuring her foot on a light as she tries to do some sort of handstand flip or whatever, and she hits the light. Vendettas is the daily where they have to go across the X overboard on the ocean and get get their X to their section. Melissa can't compete in the challenge due to her injury, so she's automatically going into elimination. Nelson chooses to take the money from Joss. Victor, Nelson, and Zach win the first batch. Natalie, Nicole, and Veronica win the second batch. Nicole pushes Alicia off, and she's not impressed whatsoever, but that doesn't really end up turning into anything confrontational, so it's kind of boring. Devin, Bananas, and Brad win the third batch, and Sylvia, Marie, and Kayla win the fourth batch. I did really enjoy this daily, and the sound effects added to it, kind of like it's some sort of Mario or arcade game, was really great. Devin and Natalie win overall, with them and Bananas making it to the Troika. Natalie tells Bananas that she does not want to throw in Alicia, but he tells her that Alicia has no one and she does not want to piss off the other woman either, as she is also intimidated by the vet woman. Natalie tries to get close to Veronica, but Veronica sees right through her and doesn't buy into it, though we do hear certain things about them at the reunion, where they do get close, but not in the way that you would think. She does the same thing to Kayla, and she is confused with it, since Kayla doesn't know if Natalie is threatening or not. She doesn't know if Natalie's threatening her or not, and it shows that Big Brother strategy doesn't translate well to the challenge. Alicia is thrown in at the Troika, and she shoots down Veronica getting up because she worked hard to get Veronica to like her. And this is Natalie trying to get Veronica to like her. I'm referring to Natalie. Devin realizes that Natalie is fake and is desperately trying to be liked, so she's getting clocked by many people throughout the episode. Alicia, Cam, and Kaylee are nominated, and Cam wants some answers. She tells them that she will remember in the future that she was sent in, and of course, Alicia mentions the same people keep on winning these shows and seasons, which doesn't help when Bananas is in the Inquisition. In the Troika, my bad. Natalie mentions that she voted for Cam, and Cam is definitely going to remember this, and Natalie is definitely intimidated by Cam. We move on to Kaylee and Nelson getting closer to one another at the club, and Nicole is flirting with Melissa, where Melissa mentions that her type has penis! That's pretty funny. Kaylee is complaining to Alicia about Melissa, and she wants Melissa gone, though she tells Alicia that Cam might be sent in to boot her. Alicia is voted into elimination, where she and Melissa compete in Chain Reaction, where they have to build a chain ladder by using the rungs and ring the bell at the top. And I did find this elimination to be pretty decent, where Melissa does end up beating Alicia. On this season, Alicia was nowhere near as interesting as she was on either Are You the One or on X on the Beach, where her drama with Corey carried over right over there. I know she was supposed to be on Dirty 30, but she ended up injuring herself, where she might have been more interesting if she was on that season. She wasn't a big personality here and didn't compete well, so it's really not shocking that she never came back after this. But maybe it was due to her having a poor X on the Beach experience as well. Overall, she's very disappointing from this one showing. Melissa and Nicole fool around in the bed, And it's crazy that we will see this dynamic on All Stars 5 in some capacity since they're both on there and supposedly they're getting very, very close after that season filmed, where we don't really know what's happening with them. Brad notices that Marie took an entire box of pizza to hoard for herself, and Brad calls her out for it, which Marie doesn't appreciate. Brad is not forgetting about the principal! And everyone is talking about Brad's midlife crisis, where Bananas, Leroy, and Zach are annoyed by Brittany and want her gone. While Brad and Brittany are having sex in the bunk, Marie throws 3 boxes of pizza on them. Brad is livid, and Marie mentions that he does not take care of his 2 kids, which is such a low blow, and all of this is just messy as fuck. Brad rants to Joss about what happened, and he wants her gone now. Marie recaps what happened to Sophia, Kayla, and Cam, and all of this is just so ridiculous, but so good as well. Food Wars is the daily where they have to eat a bunch of gross food and doing trivia, where people who answer the question correctly gets to choose who gets to eat it. It is a genderless daily now, or a genderless day now, and the losing team gets to choose one person to go into elimination. Melissa takes the team's grenade where she gets to choose the teams, but it really doesn't make much of a difference. Of course, we have the now classic Tony time that he is known for currently. Anyways, Tony is tired of being known as the worst boyfriend ever, and that is one of the questions that is asked during the daily, since he's a changed man, supposedly, and wants to forget about the past, and he wants the past to be forgotten. Tony causes himself, Zach, and Marie to be in the troika, and they choose Sylvia, Brad, and Joss as the losing team. But the 2 men choose Sylvia to go in to make sure that it is a women's elimination, not a men's elimination. Sylvia is rightfully pissed off since she was the one who did the eating challenges. The 3 of them are arguing as they do their closing confessional, and this weak moment ends up justifying Sylvia and Joss being paired in the next season. And it kind of shows some of the underlyings of sexism that influence the politics of this season. This is only the first instance of that. We move back into the house, and Sylvia is very sick, where Kayla tells her to send in Brittany. And Kayla is not over Brittany annoying the hell out of her last season, and they want to split up herself and Brad. Brittany literally interrupts the conversation to try to campaign, which is just so transparent. Shane is willing to stir the pot with Joss and Sylvia because he is bored as hell, and we learn that Marie, Cam, Kayla, and Sylvia are aligned with one another, where they still want Brittany voted in. Zach and Sylvia are talking, with Tony just being there, so he asks her about who she wants to go in against, and she mentions Melissa and Kaylee, and Zach mentions that people want Brittany in to split up her and Brad. Tony is starting to warm up to Sylvia, despite her turning on him in Invasion a year ago, since they still have good history going back to their real world season. Brad makes his pitch to Tony so they can clear the air about their past, and we also see Bananas telling Natalie to beware of her target, since Brittany has the same targets due to Brad, so essentially them associating with strong threats could bite them in the ass. Pretty much. So Tony reports everything with Brad back to Bananas and Leroy, where they're shading Brad for devolving since Cutthroat and has become more of a caveman. Marie knows that she is going to take the fall for whatever happens at the Troika, where the 2 Brits are for sure getting nominated, but the Troika reveals that it is Melissa, Kaylee, and Brittany that are nominated. Brittany is pissed off that she's in over some rookies, though this is still only her second season, and Tony really doesn't care. We see Nicole giving Melissa advice, and she tells Melissa that Sylvia wants to go in against Kaylee. Cam is watching the entire conversation awkwardly for some reason off at the side. Brittany rants to the women about being nominated, and they mention that Brad is making many alliances and is pissing a lot of people off. The dinner takes place where Melissa mentions that she put the team together, and Brittany continues her complaining, but she mentions that she and Brad can make amends with them if they let her off here. Kaylee calls out Melissa for making her pitch about sexual attraction, and the 2 of them are arguing, where Kaylee is calling her out for hooking up with Nicole, who is Tony's friend, and she's mentioning that Melissa is forgetting to have feelings for Nicole. Melissa says that what she does is no one else's business, and Kaylee mentions that Melissa has a boyfriend, which Melissa didn't deny. And it's interesting how she also did this on 39, but she denied it there. Repeated pattern here. Brittany continues her complaining to Tony, and I'm over it already, and I just want her to shut it. Kaylee picks a fight with Nicole of some sorts because Nicole doesn't feel used, and Kaylee tells her that she is being used, and all this is just stupid, and Kaylee is wasting her breath. Cam speaks to Melissa since she wants her to be in the right state of mind, and she asks Melissa if she wants to know what people are really thinking about her, since Melissa wants people to always be upfront and honest with her. Melissa pins her hair up like she's going to do something, and they're getting in one another's faces. Cam is not scared of Melissa pointing at her and in her face. Melissa says that she isn't stronger than her, but Cam is for sure bigger than her. Cam ends up pinning her hair up. Melissa gets in her face, and Cam pushes her back. Jamie, for some reason, decides to come in. So it's essentially 2 against 1 here. Melissa is claiming that she isn't going to be bullied by Cam. I notice that Melissa always does this whenever she gets into an argument with someone on the show. It is the next morning, and Melissa is literally following and picking a fight with Cam about how she's a bully and a bitch, following her around the stairs, and Cam is silent around the entire thing. Are you going to react to someone like this if you are really being bullied? Cam tells Nicole to get her girlfriend because she got in her face, and Nicole is really confused about what just happened. Cam complains about it to Kayla and some of the others, where Bananas pretty much tells Cam to shut it since he's tired of all the drama and doesn't really care. Zach, Marie, and Tony still do not know what they are going to do with the choice. Melissa calls Cam a bully in front of the elimination. Cam calls her out for playing a victim, and she should be worried about whether she'll be called into elimination tonight. Melissa is called into elimination, which is oil and water, where they have to rush into the watery pit and wrestle for the ball on their knees, where they are all up. The elimination is really physical, and it's a good one to watch, with Melissa pulling any dirty moves that she can, but a sick Sylvia pulls it out over Melissa. I will say that Melissa brought it during her short time on the season. She is pretty competitive, despite her size, scrappy, is willing to hook up to further her game, even if she isn't that sexuality with the person that she's flirting with, while also being transparent about it. And drama follows her everywhere. The only thing that annoys me about her is that she victimizes herself as a lot, but it isn't a shocker that she became a regular from her performance this season. Sylvia feels better about her elimination win, but she still feels very sick, while she is contemplating with her eyes about what to do with her grenade. Nicole thinks that most of the other women were jealous of Melissa. Then we move on to Nelson and Kelly snuggling up. The editors are playing up with Joss and somewhat Victor being eye candy, but it seems like Shane and Veronica are close with one another and are becoming friends slash allies. But they've done a few OG seasons together, so it wouldn't be shocking if some of that is the backlog from that. We have some sort of notes being dropped into one of the rooms, and I really don't give a fuck about Notegate, and I will not be wasting any more time on this. Bananas had his sister write a bunch of notes pre-season and plant it. In my opinion, he did all this so he could get guaranteed camera time, and I'm not wasting any more time on this. Moving the fuck on. Devin, Brad, and Victor, Nelson, and Shane, Josh might have been in the room also, are all talking about how Bananas needs to be targeted, and Victor especially is here for it. Natalie and Sylvia are not partaking in the challenge since they are being handled by doctors as they are sick, so Sylvia's grenade is essentially cancelled. The daily is gasping for air, where they are 15 feet in the air and it is being done in the night. They are in teams and they have to swim and pull circular rings as far as they can. I really do like this daily, and it being done in the night makes it so much cooler. Tony, Bananas, and Kyle get into the troika out of the green team, and Brad is voted into elimination by their team. Brad is excited to go in since it's been a while, and Sylvia is getting really cold. Victor and Devin are campaigning to Cal, but trusting Cal is never the way to go. Natalie is telling Johnny to blindside Victor as he is acting like he is running things, though she claims that she isn't using Bananas. Bananas is pushing for Devin and Victor to be nominated. Natalie mentioned to him that Victor is very smart. And they all mention that he is too nice, while they mention that Shane is too annoying as hell, and he is trying to be a mastermind. Shane, Devin, and Victor are nominated. Shane is annoyed that Joss wasn't nominated, and I forgot that's what he and Victor were pushing. Bananas wants to see them to spell tea. Shane mentions that The people he sleeps with are targeting him. Shane mentions that he wasn't targeting him, so he's throwing Victor and Devin under the bus here. Victor doesn't have much to say, and Shane rolls him under the bus. Devin mentions that Tony and Cal aren't speaking, and Tony mentions some Scottie Pippen, Michael Jordan, and Dennis Rodman analogy, which is very ironic due to some of the dynamics with those people and their families today. If you watch Miami Housewives. Cal and Nicole kiss, and he is hoping to turn Nicole straight. And she's getting what she dished out, and it's clearly just a joke. We see Bananas and Katie flirt, or joke around, which will matter later on. Devin wants to use this to his advantage later on, so he is clearly holding this onto his ransom, which will be very important. Anyways, we move on to Victor campaigning two bananas, and Shane decides to confront Victor about trying to throw him under the bus, though that's literally what Shane was trying to do. And he isn't going to ass kiss him. Victor is confused since he didn't do anything wrong, and Shane is tired of the ass kissing. They continue in the house, then Shane mentions that Victor said his name. Victor's tried to defend himself, but he ends up walking off due to Shane not being responsive. Brittany and Brad are wishing him luck before going to the elimination, and it's clear that their friendship is done between Victor and Shane. Victor is named the other nominee, where he and Brad are playing Troubled Water, where they have to get as much water out of the tank where it reaches the red line and smash the bottom to win. Brad easily beats Victor in the elimination. This could have easily been a Timmy versus Abram elimination situation with the breaking of glass, but it isn't one of my favorites due to that, but I guess it worked out fine here. Anyways, it was clear that the producers and MTV wanted Outfit Vic without them realizing that that was a persona. There was a consistent mention that he was too nice for the show, and he apparently really hated his experience on the show, where he barely promoted it. So it really isn't shocking that he never came back. He was on the reunion, and they didn't even give him closing confessionals on the actual episode. He just kind of walked off. Anyways, it isn't shocking that they casted more explosive male Big Brother personalities to represent the show after this, with Polly, Jose, and Joshua being the next three right after this. Cal and Cara Maria are testing Marie and they want her out, and she is talking about how he has the best social game in the house. It is announced that Sylvia was pulled from the game due to her illness, and they get over it as soon as possible, so it's kind of weird that they don't really show her at all in this instance. Sylvia definitely won a tough elimination, and seeing her sick gave me Frank from Free Agent vibes. I would be lying if I said that she was a big personality on the show, and I did see how she was kind of the first victim of how the Troll MS would be handled this season. You will see her again, so at least this isn't the last of her, though she herself wasn't that interesting this season. The daily is Puppet Master, where they are in two teams. They have to retrieve puzzle pieces to make Anissa and CT puppets, hinting of their return as. Actually, no, I don't even think CT returned in the season. I guess they just wanted to use the two of them. But it does hint at Anissa's return. And then the teams are chained together. It is a double elimination where Kyle, Nicole, and Tony are all in the troika, and Nicole outright tells Shane that he is a snake, so he's going in. The losing team votes in Joss and Veronica into elimination. The troika has to choose 3 guys and 3 girls to go in, and there is no Inquisition. Nicole and Tony are arguing about who to pick for the nominees, where she didn't want to nominate a lot of the women from her room. Devin, Nelson, and Shane are nominated out of the guys, and Cam, Natalie, and Kayla are voted in out of the women. Devin calls Natalie out about lying regarding having no allies, and she mentions that her not having an alliance is true, which he mentions is a lie. He calls her out about aligning with Bananas and making deals with people all over the house, and making deals with people is an alliance. She doesn't like him being mean and talking down to her, and he tells her that she's acting like he is an idiot, but he's the articulate one. She walks away calling him a bully, and he calls her a liar. That's the annoying thing about Natalie, is that she always calls a person that she gets into an argument with a bully. I believe she did this on Big Brother, and she also does this on the challenge as well. So this confrontation between Ali and Devin continues in front of the house, where he and Bananas does end up going at it, where he calls out Devin for picking on girls, which is so ironic since Banana has done this several times before, and he will do it several times after this himself. The Troika nominates Cam and Shane to go into elimination, but they're facing the Mercenaries. Jordan and Tori, the latter who only did one season, Anissa and Derek arrive to be mercenaries, and Crazy 8 is the elimination, where they have to pull the 8, and it's essentially another version of pole wrestling. Joss plays against Derek, Shane plays against Jordan, Veronica plays against Anissa, and they still have beef after 30, and Cam is playing against Tori. Jordan easily washes Shane. Veronica gets her finger injured during her elimination with Anissa, causing her to DQ, and I wonder if their dynamics will be delved into on All Stars 5. And Veronica thought that Anissa would go easy on it in the elimination, but I guess they were on Ride or Dies together, but Veronica wasn't there long. And Derek, sorry, Cam beats Tori, though we get the hint about her relationship with Leeway based on his confessionals, and Derek and Joss have easily the best elimination face-off ever, where they went for over an hour, where they consistently went out of bounds because they were tiring one another out, and they kept going toe to toe. And they were bloody, injured, it was just a mess. TJ ended up making it a sudden death round, only for Derek to beat Joss because the latter thought that they were out of the ring. Shane was just as messy this season as he was last season, with blatantly stirring the pot due to boredom, and he made more enemies than friends. At the same time, he was a lot more one-dimensional here, and this was arguably his worst performing season. Veronica really wasn't memorable in the season, as she kind of just sat back and had some relationships, so she was not the outsider already struggling to fit in, but she didn't perform or have any notable moments in the season. Josh definitely showed that he's a beast in the physical element, with winning the purge out of everyone and his performance in the elimination. Outside of the cast lusting over how hot they found him to be, he didn't really do much, though he had some slightly humorous confessionals, which is more than what I remembered. It's not shocking that he came back after this. All the guys are happy that Joss is gone, and Killer Cam calls herself Killer Cam, where Natalie makes a deal with her in the bathtub, and Marie is very happy that her ally came back. Cam mentions that Natalie spared her in the elimination, but she's expecting Natalie to protect her entire room, which is honestly just ridiculous in my opinion. Marie does not believe it because Natalie is as fake as the boobs on her chest, so essentially what Polly said to her on Big Brother AT. Cara Maria has the same conversation with Cam, and it's kind of icy, and Cara Maria senses that she'll probably be the recipient of Cam's grenade. Car Crash is the daily where the teams have to go in and across the cars to make it to the end. The daily is horrible, especially with what happened with Leroy and they oiled them up, and apparently they made it rain above them as well. Or maybe it was just naturally raining, I don't even remember. Cam uses her grenade at Cam Maria, who threatens and tries to buck at Cam, but Cam doesn't care at all. Though Zach sees Cam as Marie and Kayla's puppet, who is doing their bidding. Speaking of Leroy, he smashes on a car while trying to land on it and falls face first into the lake. Nelson, Bananas, and Carmaria and Natalie win the daily on it, and this ends up happening mainly due to Bananas. And Bananas, actually, no, I think Nelson kind of helped as well. And Bananas, Natalie, and Nelson end up making the Troika. Cam breaks her word to Marie and votes in Marie, where Jemmy mentions that Cam did it to protect herself, and of course Marie is not happy at all. Marie snaps at the both of them in the group's final confessional, and then we have Jemmy and Marie continuing to go at it, since Marie wants to see her in the elimination. Marie and Kayla are both pissed off at Cam's move, especially since Cam promised that she would protect their entire room. Kayla confronts Cam about it and asks her if she has an alliance with Jimmy, where Cam mentioned that it was a self-defense move, since it was either her or Marie going in. We see Kaylee and Nelson getting closer, and Natalie is trying to align with Jimmy and Carmaria, since all the other women are together at this point. Kayla campaigns the Bananas, where Leroy, Tony, and Zach, I believe, are her biggest allies there, and she isn't targeting him or Nicole. Neither Bananas or Kyle, who is also in the room, buys Kayla's pitch and calls it idiotic, where she doesn't get the big deal of having three guy allies, where Cara Maria and Cara Maria and Natalie are his biggest woman allies. Marie also campaigns to Natalie and Bananas, and thus is essentially steamrolled in the Troika, where Nicole, Kayla, and Carmaria. What the fuck am I on? Anyways, hopefully I cleared all of that up. Cam is campaigning for Natalie to nominate Nicole, if it's a puzzle, since Nicole sucks at puzzles, and Cam is trying to save her friends. Kayla is sent into the elimination where she and Marie compete in basket case, where they have to get out of the basket they're in and then complete a puzzle. This elimination really sucks in my opinion and just wasn't fun to watch. Anyways, Kayla does beat Marie in the elimination. Marie was actually pretty interesting to watch here this season, with her drama with Brad, her no match with Cal, and then being screwed over by her allies. She was definitely more fun to watch here, especially after a disappointing return over the last 2 seasons. She does have one more season, and I'm glad that there was some sort of battle of the seasons Marie that is back here this season. Leila and Cam realize that it is just the two of them, and they talk about Nicole being a snake, Kaylee being kept around as a layup, and Natalie cannot be trusted. Kayla speaks to Natalie to clear the air, but Kayla is lying through her teeth, and Natalie still doesn't trust her, so this conversation essentially accomplishes nothing. The daily is kicking ass, where they are playing soccer and football, winning giant. Sorry, they're wearing giant orbs and still playing it, and it's all pretty fun to watch, especially with how ridiculous they all look. Kayla uses her grenade to pick the teams for the team. Daily. Anyways, I did enjoy the daily a lot, and it's one of my favorites this season for sure. The blue team wins where Tony, Zach, and Kayla are in the troika, blocking Brad out, and the green team nominates Devin for elimination. He is really pissed off that Jamie voted him in and didn't appreciate that Kaylee didn't vote with her showman Nelson. Nelson and Devin are complaining about Kaylee's move, and people are giving Kaylee the side eye. Nelson confronts Jamie about her vote, where she mentions that it is Kaylee who screwed them over, not her. Devin joins the conversation to tag team her, but Bananas enters to mention that he will choke Devin. He can take him out, and Devin is only kept around because he's a layup, where Devin mentions that he will see him in the ring, and he'll beat Bananas in anything non-physical. Bananas interestingly calls Devin out for tag teaming and calling out a girl, which he himself has done before this and has done after. And I believe I mentioned this a few episodes ago, and ironically, Bananas is doing this to Devin's current girlfriend on Battle of the Eras as I'm recording this. Michelle. That's Devin's girlfriend as I'm recording this. Devin campaigns to Kayla to give him bananas, and she is here for it, but isn't sure that the others will do it, and he campaigns to Tony as well. The Troika nominates Leroy, Bananas, and Nelson, and Tony sees Bananas as his big brother, and Zach doesn't want to take a shot too soon. Zach tells Leroy and Bananas that he is going to nominate Nelson, and we see the Inquisition, where Leroy and Bananas are kind of threatening them to not nominate either of them. Where Bananas mentions that he isn't going anywhere anytime soon in the future seasons, so they better think about the future. And this is the mentality that a lot of challengers have that kind of makes the show less interesting at times. David is using the ammo that he has on Katie and Bananas, so he can split now Lily and Bananas and Nelson and Katie, where he tells Nelson about Katie and Bananas having a series of hookups, which Kevin conveniently remembers. And this was the thing that he was hinting at a few episodes prior. Devin narrates to the confessional that he saw the two of them hooking up very early on in the season, and he conveniently didn't mention this part to Nelson. Nelson reports this to Brittany and Nicole, without fact-checking at all, like the idiot that he is, but of course he avoids Katie when she asks him if he was looking for her, like a punk ass. Nelson decides to mention to Natalie that Katie and Bananas has been hooking up, and most of the house is in it, where Bananas doesn't give a shit about this rumor. Natalie plays off this rumor, but it is bothering her deep down. Anyways, Bananas denies it to Nelson since he hasn't even kissed or made out with Natalie, much less anyone else, and Devin is stirring the pot. Kaylee is told the rumor by Cal and Carmaria, where Bananas came onto her very early on in the season, and it was before she got to know Nelson, and we see Kaylee and Cal reenacting what happened with her and Bananas in a very funny segment. Bananas complains about the situation to Leroy, Tony, and Zach. Kayla and Jenna talk to Natalie and Nicole about Kaylee being a liar, and she's around to be a layup. At the club, Cal is encouraging for Tony to make the trigger against Bananas, since they will win a final without him. Natalie mentions that Kaylee has not been nice to her the entire season, and Jimmy hasn't liked her either. Johnny and Katie are ranting about the entire situation. Kayla tells Katie that she is kicked out of their room, but no one wants her to sit at the table with them, and she mentions that she needs to go home. Katie says that the US is further from Spain than the UK is, so she should go. Apparently, Kayla was trash talking Kayla the entire night, but they didn't show that. I guess because they wanted to make her look more like a victim and Kayla more like the villain, I guess. So Kayla didn't help herself in this regard. They all go back into the house where Jemmy, Kayla, and Brittany decide to grab Kaylee's stuff from Natalie's bed, from Natalie's room, throws Kaylee's bed and clothes off the cliff into the living room. Katie runs up the stairs and is losing her mind, only for Nicole and Cal to hold her back. Cam tells Kayla to handle her issues one-on-one and tells Jamie to back up since there's no ganging up, and I really respect this from Cam, and it is ironic since Katie is one of Cam's best friends in real life, from what I remember and what Cam has said in the years since. Natalie doesn't see it as bullying, though she calls everything else bullying, and this is kind of a prime example of Natalie weaponizing certain actions that she disapproves of on others, but it's fine when it's to her benefit, and this is a thing she's done since Big Brother. And Cara Maria thinks that the trio are bullying. The trio mentions that they just threw her stuff down and it isn't bullying. Katie complains to the producer and she goes to a hotel for the evening. Katie comes back to the house and Natalie is ranting to Nelson about how Bananas won't come talk to her and she feels used. Honestly, they're both using one another in and outside of the house and the both of them did some shitty press paparazzi pictures to make it look like they're dating and they weren't. TJ lectures the trio about bullying, which is pathetic as fuck to me, since he had to be goaded by Leeway to talk about the racism last season, and there have been severe cases of bullying that he nor any of the producers has ever lectured or mentioned, and most of it has been done by the men. Kayla and Tony vote in Bananas, where he and Devin compete in Not So Bright, where they see a bunch of flashing lights and they have to light the board from top to bottom. It is definitely a janky elimination, but Devin does end up beating Bananas. Katie ends up quitting the game as well, and I honestly just find it pathetic. Bananas was a lot more memorable here than he was on his last two seasons, though he had the fake ass romance with Natalie, and his feud with Devin was definitely entertaining throughout the season. Seeing him get his comeuppance in such the glory that he did was great, though it's so interesting that he still hates Sarah for what she did to him, but forgave Tony so easily. The note thing was beyond lame as hell, and it's one of the reasons why I get tired of the same vets overproducing. Honestly, Katie has been vile and done just as bad stuff on other reality shows, and she'll continue to be horrible after this, so I don't see this UK situation as something that needs a bullying PSA. Outside of that, her toxic romance with Nelson, she didn't really offer anything to the show, but she's more tolerable on future appearances, I guess. Ivan is more than thrilled that he beat Bananas, and Leroy also feels the exact opposite. Natalie and Nelson are getting close due to the situation that they're the quote unquote victims of, but we move on to Nicole's birthday, where they made her a birthday cake. Nicole talks about her ex girlfriend Laurel, who she recently broke up with, and they are together for 10 months. And I wonder why this is coming up now. The daily is this land is my land, where they are on three teams and they have to stack pallets to get to the top of it. TJ announces that it is a double elimination where the winning team has to send in a guy and a girl to go directly into elimination. Devin uses his grenade to pick the teams and he plans to use it to screw over Leroy since he's the next target with Bananas now being gone. The green team wins it, which consists of Tony, Zach, Nicole, Natalie, and Brittany. And Zach and Tony force themselves into the troika, where Natalie is the third person, as they see her as a puppet. And the red team, i.e., Cam, Nelson, Devin, Brad, and Kayla, lose, where Cam and Brad are going into elimination since they are voted in by their team. Tony and Zach make a promise to not throw in Brittany. Remember this. Devin is hoping that Tony and Zach save him, and Nelson is hoping that Natalie saves him. I wonder how all this will go down. Zach speaks to Cara Maria and Cal about voting in Brittany since she is kissing ass to a bunch of people and doesn't like how she worded it that she gave the choker to them. She's protecting Devin, Brad, and Nelson over her, and Natalie feels bad about breaking another promise, though Zach and Tony don't care about it at all. The nominees are Nelson, Leroy, and Kyle, and Jemmy, Brittany, and Carmaria. Brittany is very pissed off, and of course Zach and Tony have nothing to say to her. Brad, and his bug eyes, tells her to focus on the elimination. Tony, Zach, and Natalie chooses Nelson and Brittany to go in, though they both just wanted a warning, and Natalie wonders why she isn't trusted. TJ brings in some mercenaries, which are Laurel, Ashley, Darrell, and Frank. Nicole, of course, gets emotional once she sees her ex and is bawling on the sidelines, which is a cruel birthday gift, or at least that's how she sees it. Yanking my chain is the elimination where they have to run around a circle and make it to the belt across, and it is an endurance competition. Cam is going against Ashley, Brittany against Laurel, Brad against Frank, and Nelson against Darrell. Brad ends up beating Frank, Cam ends up beating Ashley, Darrell and Nelson tie, which never happens, and I honestly think it's a cop out, and Laurel questions Brittany, and it's akin to Laurel washing Jasmine on free agents. The episode ends with a closer conversation and hug again between Nicole and Laurel, and it's far from the end with them, as they will be on X on the beach and All Stars 4 together, which is a long time away at this point. I found Britney's hookup with Brad to be trashy in a really fun way, with how random it is, but she was mainly shown in the lens of being Brad's showmance and nothing really else. She wasn't as funny as she was in the last season, and the only drama she got into this season was joining in on the Katie myth, and she was the most forgettable one there. She's a B character who's quickly becoming a C or D character, which we will see next season if you can even count that. Natalie is trying to apologize to Nelson, and she is seemingly, emphasis on seemingly, regretting her move, where she is crying to him. Kayla is overhearing this and talks in a confessional about how Natalie is sad that her game was exposed, where you have to actually keep the promises that you make with people, and she repeatedly breaks her promises. And honestly, Kayla isn't wrong in this regard. The next daily is Spanish Treasure, where they are on two teams and they have to jump in the water to deposit a ball in a net, where the treasure chest floats to the surface and they have to bring it back up. Cam uses her time crunch grenade against Cara Maria, and Brad uses his grenade on Kyle, where he cannot even really play in the way that he could, since he is tied up. And this is supposed to justify them being rivals on the next season, which, Natalie is yet Natalie yet again screws Nelson by putting him on the bad team since she's in self-preservation mode. I'm so tired of the black people not knowing how to swim on this damn show. Anyways, Tony and Zach's team wins, where Tony and Zach bulldoze their way into the truck yet again, and the woman agreed to it because Natalie and Nicole are promised safety, and Jamie really wants no woman in there since it means more women that isn't her are able to be nominated. The losing team is at a stalemate because Leroy didn't change his vote from Kayla to Maria, and the Troika votes in Cam, since she is a rookie. Brad, Zach, and Tony are in the Troika, where they vote in Maria, Kayla, and Natalie, despite her being promised that she would be safe, since she has a lot of money and she is also a rookie. Kayla and Cam talk about Natalie, and Cam gives Kayla some points to mention to throw Natalie under the bus in the Inquisition. Maria talks about her experience in finals, and Kayla throws Natalie under the bus, and the two women go at it a bit during the Inquisition, since Kayla mentions that Natalie has no strength. She was strong. She was on strong teams the entire season, and Natalie failed to make connections. So the Troika does send in Natalie as the other nominee, and TJ calls out the woman for letting three men get into the Troika. Spanish torture is the elimination where they're both tied to ropes and they have to skate across the land. It seems like Natalie would thrive in this since she was a gymnast and she's in the lead, and she's also smaller, but she ends up flipping over and can't move, where Cam is able to pass her despite her being upside down as well, which leads to Cam beating Natalie. I actually did enjoy watching this elimination. Okay, so it was interesting watching Natalie navigate through the game as the first notable Big Brother person to ever be on the show, and seeing what transferable strategy worked from that show onto the show. She was definitely more of a snake this time, and was definitely a bit fake when it came to how she dealt with people and the Banana Showmans, but she was a refreshing person to watch, and was more interesting here than Big Brother 18, though I definitely agree with most of the accusations against her on both Big Brother and the challenge. It is the first case of Big Brother having a bad stigma on the show. TJ announces that a purge is going to happen, where two of them are not going to make it to the Czech Republic. Kayla and Cam are proud that they'll probably make it to the final, and how Cam wanted her to be gone. I don't know who they're referring to. I don't know if they're referring to Cara Maria or Jimmy or whatever. Just ignore that last part. Help Me Rhonda is the daily where they essentially have to run, then go on a zip line over 200 feet above the ground, go through the city, and then climb down a wall where they will then have to reach the finish line. Of course, the final man and woman are purged out of the game. Zach and Nicole won the daily, with Jimmy and Devin getting purged from the game, as Kyle beats Devin by 5 seconds. Jemmy really was just there this season. She was kind of underrated in the season on a gameplay point of view. Had a decent confessional here and there, and of course there was the Katie stuff that was not a good look for her, and then she jumped into the Melissa and Cam fight, which also had nothing to do with her. Overall, Jemmy isn't really adding much at this point. Devin was a hoot during the season. Of course, his conflict with Johnny Bananas really took off this season, though there a hint of it during Rivals 3, and he started his Big Brother Sucks mantra this season with Natalie, and we will know that there's carry on throughout at least until the mid Era 4. He was such a shit stirrer, though I was not the most fond of how he used the Kaylee situation to his advantage, but he made the season a lot more entertaining than it probably would have otherwise been. It's definitely his breakout season overall. They are going to the Czech Republic, where the last time Brad went there was when he won Cutthroat with his now ex-wife Tori. If I remember correctly, I think this is the final location change for the final on the flagship show or on the show in general, in my opinion. Outside the box is the final daily where they have to move past a pylon where they are being attached while being attached to a truck, so they have to move from one side to another to avoid getting hit by a pylon. I've seen this lady many times, and it isn't the worst one, but I'm kind of just bored by it at this point. Anyways, nothing gets less in the challenge over Leroy, and the winners are Tony and Kayla, where both of them are guaranteed to be in the final. So Nelson is purged, essentially. Nelson had an interesting season. He, of course, dealt with Corey going home first, and then writing the season all on his own, since Hunter wasn't on the season either. Of course, there was the showmance with Kaylee that was definitely toxic throughout the season, and he kind of proved to not be smart yet again. Outside of that, he wasn't in a lot of the drama this season, or at least the one that was shown, at least. I think he and Shane did get into it, but they just didn't air it, which might justify why they were paired in the next season. But this was one of his calmer seasons while still having a storyline. Cara Maria is the third person in the Troca, and or at least third place, and all three of them are in the Troca, where they now have to decide three guys to go into elimination, where two of them are going in now, with the announcement that all four of them are going to be in the final. I'm assuming that they are doing all of this because no guy went home during the second round of the missionaries, where only Brittany went home, so they needed to get rid of some of the guys very, very quickly. Where was I? Because Kayla and Carmia wants to keep Zach for the final so they can run against him or run with him so they could win if there's a partner element to it. They outvote Tony, so Leroy, Brad, and Kyle are up for elimination. Leroy mentioned that his relationships with the cast should be a reason as to why they keep him around, and they feel like he is entitled and aggressive in his approach. And of course, Carmaria is sleeping with Kyle. So of course she's not going to vote him in. Cam mentions Camroy, and she's trying to cheer him up, and it's so clear that they edited out their show much this season, which I'm pretty sure they're regretting now, with how long they lasted. And it wasn't a good idea. Brad and Leora are trusting to go into the elimination, and Leora is very pissed off, since she wants to bring a rookie who has never run to a final, and it's essentially vet entitlement from Leroy. And it shows that his carefree, lackadaisical attitude and strategy doesn't get him anywhere, really, in comparison to the other veterans. So, Headbanger is the elimination where they break through the walls and then smash the balls across the fence, where they have to put the mini balls in the tube. I also forgot to mention that Leroy then picks a fight with Tony, since he used this excuse of quote unquote Leroy's aggressive, where he should have just mentioned that he thinks that he could beat Kyle easier in the final, and I agree with Leroy on this point. And it's interesting that Tony, one of the most aggressive people on the challenge ever, is accusing Leroy of being aggressive. Anyways, this is an interesting elimination, but Leroy does end up beating Brad. Seeing Brad return was beyond interesting, not only with the fact that he's now divorced from Tori, but how he handled himself caused him to be seen as a loony, crazy man by the cast, and he was coming off some sort of midlife crisis. Hooking up with Brittany immediately, getting into fights with people like Marie over pizza, and just being a train wreck was a fun and sad thing to watch at the same time. Anyways, Brad from this season shows why it's good to bring back OGs who haven't been on in a while to the main show every once in a while. Leroy clears the air with Tony once they arrive back home, and Leroy talks about the season not being fun for him. He doesn't appreciate his friends turning on him, and Tony didn't appreciate the approach, and Leroy calling him a bitch. Carmaria and Kyle are talking about the final where he is scared, and there's talks about their future together, which we know doesn't amount to much. Zach is still holding on to Leroy voting him in on Exes 2, which happened 3 years ago, which is just so ridiculous. They have to run a mile and a half long course and get through a few checkpoints and legs for the final. Johnny and Melissa are mercenaries during the final, and it's lame as hell in my opinion, where they have to play a game with them, where if they lose the game, they are essentially sabotaged, which will probably lead to them getting out. Also, you only get money if you're in the top two, and they start the final changed up. They get to the token station, and they then have to deposit their torches from one end to another, and then they can also sabotage other people too. Nicole injures her foot and it has to be wrapped, where she's eliminated on the spot essentially. The game Johnny and Melissa plays is high-low, where they have to guess which card they have based on the two. This essentially screws over Cam, and we have Zach, Kyle, Carmia, and Kayla in the final checkpoint, where Leroy, Cam, and Tony are eliminated. Leroy didn't do much in the season. He didn't win the dailies throughout the entire season, he coasted off of bananas, and then had to deal with being on his own, only to snap at the end. I'm sure they edited out his budding relationship with Cam, which sucks, but I'm kind of tired of Leroy at this point. Nicole had a weird hookup with Melissa, which may still be a thing as I'm recording this, based on them hanging out a lot, and then she had that reaction when Laura arrived, which was interesting, but she was under the radar for a lot of the season after being so prominent earlier on. So she wasn't really interesting, but didn't really piss me off that much. Tony definitely had his big season here where he did perform well, though I think a lot of that definitely had to do with the Troika format, and he wasn't a train wreck for the first time. He did come off as douchey this season, with stabbing so many people in the back, and while he was more together here, he still came off as more villainous. I liked Cam when I first watched this all the way back in 2018, as she came off as less scripted in the confessionals here compared to the feature, so I found her to be a bit better to watch here. She's someone whose presence just commands respect, and she got into a better drama with Melissa in the beginning, but she showed up, competed when she needed to, and didn't take no complaints. It is the second part of the final, and TJ announces that it is one person, whether it is a guy or a girl, is winning, but they all will keep whatever they have in their bank account, and they have an increased prize amount based on their placement. And I really hate that they did the one winner thing here. So the second part of the final is a puzzle where they essentially have to memorize the color pattern of the circles. They end it on a cliffhanger where they reveal the results at the reunion, like they did last season. But we're not doing that here, just like last season. Cara Maria gets first place, Zach gets second place, Cal gets third place, and Kayla gets fourth place. Kayla definitely had a peak this season from a competitive and a political point of view, and this was the first season where she really wasn't hated in the house. I did not like how she got involved in the Kaylee mess, though Kaylee was apparently talking about her in the season, and she definitely came off as very mean, but she kind of handled her issue on her own. And her mean streak would continue throughout the future seasons. Despite all that, she will definitely lose her momentum as a main girl and a main challenger from here on out. Kyle was seen as a layup in the season, since he didn't really have any notable performances in the dailies throughout the season, and he was kind of lackadaisical. I didn't care much for his romance with Carmia at all, but he was kind of seen as a political coattail rider. He was pretty funny at times during the season, and I will say that the work he got done on the later seasons was really good. So he is plastic surgery gone right. Zach, honestly should have won the season. He won many dailies of the season and he controlled the politics throughout the season, and this is a prime example as to why I hate the one winner format. I think this is Zach at his most likable on the season, though I think that's because he has it together. I believe he and Jenna are together at this point in time. He isn't really getting into a bunch of the drama, and he isn't picking as a woman, and he had some funny one-liners here and there, though he's more boring than not. But him being more boring is probably better since he's less irritating. Congrats to Cara Maria for being the first solo winner ever, but I found her game to be very underwhelming this season. She didn't win much dailies, and had no control over the politics of the season, where we just saw her get mad at Cam for the grenade and the showmatch with Cal, which was very boring to be honest, and most of her focus from this point onward is about her relationship with men, which gets very tiring, but I guess she didn't irritate me as much as she did last season, and as much as she will in the future. The Miz is hosting his third consecutive reunion, and I believe this is around the time he was hosting Champs vs. Stars, so it makes sense. And Bananas is starting already, picking a fight with Kayla about her not doing shit this entire season, and only making it to the final because the final part of the final because Cam had to bury a log. Devin shades him for not making it to the final, and Bananas mentions that Devin will never be him. People are annoyed with Cara Maria for some unforeseen reason. Remember, they didn't reveal that she won yet to the public. Since Cara Maria was annoyed that Cam got grenades, which she feels like she should have had the option of being given grenades after winning elimination several seasons ago, and things aren't good between her and Nicole. Where Nicole says that Cara Maria didn't do shit this season. Leroy being burned by Cara Maria and Tony is talked about, since they should have told him before the actual elimination, and apparently Leroy threatened Tony off camera, which Tony is claiming is why he's wearing glasses now, because he doesn't want Leroy to punch him. Though Tony apparently regrets it, where he mentioned that it's the only thing from this season that he ends up regretting. Marie and Brittany's issues are discussed, where Marie went on some after show to call Brittany a confessional gangster, and they went at it on Twitter. Marie calls Brittany a confessional gangster when Brittany never had that energy towards her face, though this stemmed from Brittany being accused of writing the stupid notes from Marie. This is really stupid as hell, though I do think Brittany definitely has elements of being a confessional gangster. Leroy mentioned that he was knocked out in the hospital for 2 days after his injury with that car daily, and Veronica submitted a photo of her finger right after the elimination, which was red and broken, where touching it hurt for over 6 weeks. Derek also posted pictures of the injuries he got after his elimination with Joss, and we know that Cara Maria injured her chin doing the worm at a club, and it's essentially the same injury that Chet quit from on Free Agents, though he was clowned for that injury. But it just showed the difference between him and Cara Maria, where she ended up staying. Kyle, Kaylee, and Melissa appear throughout the webcam, and Kyle's hookups with Marie and Cara Maria are discussed, where Cara Maria and Kyle are not together, and we'll get more info on this during the next few seasons, specifically the next season. Kaylee blasted Nelson on social media about Nelson being an obsessed lunatic, the both of them claiming that they were never together, as she doesn't feel like she owes him anything. Apparently they had a really bad breakup when he visited her in the UK. Bananas mentioned that Devin played him, i.e. Nelson, since Devin knew about this for 3 weeks and conveniently told him this, and Bananas is absolutely correct on this, but Nelson doesn't think that far ahead or that deep into situations. Jemmye and Kaylee are arguing because of a tweet Jemmye made, where she made it clear that all Kaylee had to do was tell the truth instead of bashing Nelson to everyone that day. Melissa having a boyfriend did not stop her from hooking up with Nicole, and she is now single, where she's planning to see Nicole in New York, and I still can't believe that these two have the potential of being something 7 years later. Bananas' note stuff was discussed, and Veronica calls it out about her not wanting to discuss it since it's a huge PR run for him, and I 100% agree with Veronica. Tony turning on Johnny is discussed, and Bananas mentioned that he looked out for Tony outside of the game, and Tony's track record shows that he isn't loyal, which pisses Tony off, as Tony threatens to call out Bananas cheating, and they are both absolutely right. They're both dogs. All Bananas wanted was to have been told ahead of time. And this is the same thing that Leroy mentioned with his situation. They move on to Brad and Brittany, where they are still together. Apparently she meets Tori and the kids, though we know that this doesn't last much longer than next season. Nicole talks about how she and Carmaria kissed and she regrets that, and this really pissed off Laurel. And I know both Laurel and Carmaria discussed this at length on the podcasts at the time, and we learned that Nicole and Jamie also hooked up in the season. Nicole and Carmaria argue because Nicole thinks that she could beat Carmaria in the final, though we all know how that worked out on All Stars 4 and Nicole can't beat her. We move on to part 2 where we learn about a fight that happened between Carmaria and Marie that didn't make it on the air, where Marie wrote a fake note to cause dissension between Carmaria and Kyle, where Kyle apparently was really into Sylvia, where Sylvia wasn't a fan of his hair plugs, which were her words. Bananas and Devon's feud is discussed, and Bananas mentioned that Devon hid behind editing, and there's a reason why he was in the Inquisition the entire season, and Devon sucks in eliminations. Devon talks about how he didn't like how deceitful Natalie is, and how she tried to play Big Brother on this show, and calls Bananas out for not caring until it happened to him. Natalie explained herself about how she made a lot of mistakes, but she was learning how to play, but this is overshadowed with Bananas and Devon continuing to argue with one another. Brad's return after 7 years is discussed, where he explains himself with Pizzagate, where he tried putting himself on timeout with the first round against Marie before Marie went after him again. She talks about how she actually returned the pizza that she took initially, but he continued to pick fights with her. Brad and Zach apparently have been going at it on Twitter since the season ended, though they are laughing about it now. And it kind of makes sense why they aren't paired together in the next season, since it didn't really seem like either took anything seriously. The Brett returned via webcam on the airing of the episodes, though I'm pretty sure that the filming was probably out of sequence, or they aired this out of sequence compared to the order that they were filmed. But I'm pretty sure that the Brett filmed whatever they filmed all in one time frame. Cam claims that she tried to speak to Melissa from a good place, which honestly I don't believe, but okay. Melissa doesn't believe it, which is fair, and Jamie mentions that it was Kaylee who was throwing Melissa under the bus to everyone in the house, and Devin mentions that Kaylee plays the victim, and honestly, they're both right in this regard. The Kaylee event is discussed. Jamie is regretful, but she also mentions that Kaylee did the same thing on other shows, and Kaylee mentions that Kaylee was trashing her to the entire house, even to her own friends, Kayla's own friends. Kaylee mentions that she did stuff one-on-one unlike the others, and Bananas mentions that no one touches each other's stuff. Okay. I'm pretty sure Carmaria did the same thing to join the season prior. I also remember Tanya throwing Beth's stuff into the pool as well, and no one threw a fuss about either instance. Cal talks about what he did to Nelson and Corey, and then we talk about the secret hookups. Bananas and Katie hung up right after being eliminated. Natalie is fine now, but is annoyed that he didn't tell her. Bananas mentions that Natalie was cuddling with Veronica, and she mentions that it happened one time. And it's interesting that they didn't really go in depth with this, because I do remember Kaylee outing Natalie for... Kaylee called Natalie a lesbian, though Natalie isn't a lesbian, and that's something that will be discussed next season, and Natalie and Veronica was mentioned regarding how fake Natalie was, because she was really into Veronica and not Bananas. There are allegations that something happened with Melissa and Tony, and they both deny it. Melissa blasts Kayla on Twitter about kissing someone while she had a boyfriend, and Nelson told Kaylee after the season about this that Kaylee kissed Tony. Kayla is pissed off since Melissa was the one that was cheating, and Kaylee confirms what Nelson told her, supposedly. But interestingly enough, Nelson, Tony, and Kayla all deny it. Kayla is fed up, which again leads to her fight with Melissa next season, and Melissa and Johnny seemingly hooked up after their cameo on the finale. We learn about an unseen fight with Shane and Natalie, where Nelson was defending Natalie about Shane talking to her poorly, which is very ironic because Nelson has talked down against women before and will do so after this. And it turned into Nelson and Shane arguing, which I guess justifies them being partners next season. But apparently Shane wanted to tell Natalie that people see through her deceptive gameplay. We learn about a fight between Carmaria and Nelson where he claims she didn't do anything throughout the season, and she mentions that he only won 2 challenges during his entire career. Jordan is getting into it for some reason, though Carmaria mentioned that she deserved to be there and she deserved to win, and people claim that she was saying that she was better than the woman, but she's claiming that she denies it and she's very insecure. Derek and Jordan are arguing for some reason, and I don't give a single fuck about this. She is crying about all of this, and she talks about how insecure she really is. And clearly, they're salty that she won, despite her not doing much throughout the season. In conclusion, Vendettas is a decent season. It isn't a high tier season, and it's not a low tier season, but I don't even know if it's a mid tier season, to be honest. Seeing how Big Brother and CBS would start to slowly integrate into the show this era, and seeing the first iteration of it this season was very interesting to me. I forgot to mention that this will kind of be the start of the fall of Are You the One, where they really don't cast from that show anymore. And there's only 3 people from that show who were cast after the season, but that kind of happened to have been from happenstance instead of actively recruiting someone as a result of Are You the One. And obviously, the real world is completely done at this point, so there's no bringing anyone from there too. The To Be Continued was very annoying to deal with during the season, and it became clear that they're starting to rely more on the missionaries and the purchase this time around, which definitely threw off some of the pacing as well. There wasn't a whole lot of drama, or at least that was aired on the season compared to the last 2 seasons, or even the next few seasons, so I definitely do see why a lot of people didn't care about it. But this is a good starting point if people want to watch the newer challenge, or if you're coming from CBS and you want to watch the challenge, this would be a good season to start with. The format didn't piss me off as much as a Dirty 30, and I know Final Reckoning well. In general, it's a solid enough season. I don't like the one winner stuff, but overall, it's relatively inoffensive enough, and it'll be interesting to watch some of these people introduced here, or the Era 3 people that were new a few seasons ago, how they establish themselves in the next few seasons, since things will start to change in a few seasons, and not for the better. So this is one of the better Era 4 seasons, which is kind of crazy to say. Anyways, thank you for listening, and I'll be back with a lot more content soon. Bye!